Hello, hello everyone. So check it out. I got my Wild Whisper Design Team box, which means I get to work with this month's kit, which is called Life Isn't Perfect, and it's so fun. It's a great collection for boy layouts. It's a great collection for not so fun things that we might want to scrapbook. I'm just showing you here all of the beautiful flares. I'm going to grab that one out because I'm going to use that on my page today. And I decided to do this video a little bit longer so you kind of get a flip through of what all the papers in the collection look like. I think that they would work really good for the theme of what they are, scrapbooking things that are maybe hard or not the best situation, but also these colors and designs are very lovely and gender neutral. So I really, really like it for my pictures of my boys. I love some of these cut-apart sheets. I think some of the cut-apart sheets would make really good cards as well. And this is just another flip-through of the collection. These are the papers I'm going to be working with today, along with this cut file. So, embossing powder. Let's talk about embossing powder. So, Wild Whisper collaborated with my very favorite embossing powder companies, Emerald Creek, and they developed 4 different kinds of embossing powder. They're really, really cool, and I'm going to use those 3 colors right there along with the oxide inks I just showed you to alter a cut file. So the cut file I'm going to be altering today was made by Jody at Spiegel Mom Scraps. She actually took my very favorite autism quote. This is really my autism mantra. If you haven't been a subscriber to my channel long, my oldest son, who is now a senior, yay, he has autism,
hey,
as well as
right here.
as well as ADHD. Yep, that's him behind yelling. And so this is one of my favorite quotes, and I asked Jody to make it a cut file ages ago, and she did, and I'm pretty sure you can still find it for free on the Spiegel Mom Scraps, what's it called? The website. So when I had my son's senior pictures taken, I made sure that I got a picture of he and I together, because I really wanted to document the struggle we went through and how, school was not easy for him. Or for Mama, for that matter. So, and I wanted to use the photo of the 2 of us with this quote, and I've just been waiting for the right collection to come along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter each and every word of this quote. Every word is going to look different. It's either going to be embossed with some of the new Wild Whisper embossing powder, or it's going to be inked up with some Distress Oxide ink. Let me get the colors so I can tell you what 3 colors of embossing powders I used. So the one is called, hold on 1 second, Woolly Wisps. Another one is called Rugged Red. And then the third one I used is called Pineapple Paradise. So the one I'm going to use here is this glittery one, which is called Pineapple Paradise. And I think right now I'm just getting my heat tool. I'm turning it on so that it can get nice and hot while I go ahead and heat emboss the autism. So I'm going to heat emboss the word autism with the Pineapple Paradise, and then I'm going to use my stencil brushes and a couple sets of oxide ink to alter each of the words. Let me look. The oxide inks that I used were Faded Jeans, Antique Linen, Vintage Photo. I think that's it. I think those were the ones I used. Oh, no. Spice Marmalade and Fossilized Amber, because I did some orange and some yellow. So you saw there I used my purple tape. I masked off that top word, and then I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss it. And I put 3 coats of embossing powder over this word. In fact, all of the words that I heat embossed, I put 2 to 4, 3-ish, somewhere in there, layers of embossing. I just wanted to get a nice thick coat of the embossing powder over the words. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove that purple tape, And the reason I use the purple tape from Thermoweb is because it is low tack. And it is perfect for this type of an application. You could also use washi tape. If you're going to use a washi tape that you maybe don't like, just put it on your arm a couple times so it loses just a bit of the stickiness. And then you can go ahead and use that to mask off your words as well onto the cut file if you like. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of reset this up. The way that this cut file cuts, it kind of cuts in chunks, which works because of the way the font is. I would of course prefer that it was all in like one big piece or two big pieces, but I also really like the font it's in, so I'm really okay with it. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm starting to decide how I want to work from here. What's the next thing I'm going to do? So I know that the next word I want to use is doesn't, and so I'm going to mask that off. And then at first I was thinking that I would use an ink blending tool and kind of do what I did with the stencil last week, but then I'm like, nah, let's do the stencil brushes. So right now I'm looking for them. I'm going to find my blue stencil brush. And I'm going to start with Faded Jeans and then work through the other colors that I've pulled out and chosen. So this is what I'm going to do. Every word is going to be embossed, heat embossed with one of those 3 embossing colors, or it's going to be stencil brushed and the oxide ink applied. And then after I was totally finished, I sprayed the entire cut file with just a sprayer bottle with a mister to get just little mist droplets, because the oxide ink will affect the water. The water will affect the oxide inks. And then I left everything dry completely so I didn't accidentally tear anything or hurt any of, mess it up at all. And through the magic of YouTube, we're now done. Now, the word manual, I embossed it with the wispy wool. And as soon as I put the wispy wool onto the thing, I kind of was like, uh-oh, it's going to blend in with my white cardstock background. And I thought about using a dark background, but honestly, if I'd used the dark background, then the word parents would have been blending in with the background. So, what I'm going to decide to do, I'm just kind of thinking about this right now and deciding where I want the cut file to go, how I want my page design. I didn't really have an idea of how I wanted it to be set up. I just really was looking for a way to design this so that the cut file, which was fairly large, and the photo would both work, and of course there's the puppy. And so I'm going to kind of play around with this a little bit, but I do know right away that the cut file is the manual. The word manual is going to need a little bit of help, just a touch. And so I'm trying to think about what I can do to alter the color or change it up a little bit. This Woolly Wisps embossing powder, you guys, it is like the coolest thing ever. So it has this texture to it that's almost like wool. I don't even know how to describe it. It's the coolest thing ever. But what I'm going to decide to do is I'm going to decide to ink up the word manual with just some vintage photo distress ink. It's going to give it almost the same kind of color tone as that word comes that I inked up with the antique linen. And so I'm going to just add that to kind of make it pop so that it's easier for you to read the writing onto the page. I will say, for those of you that know for those of you who know my kids and know how much my son is obsessed with sheep and lambs, this woolly embossing powder is going to be amazing.
Talking about me.
Is going to be amazing to create a die-cut sheep with real wool. It's really cool. I will tell you, because I did practice with it a bit first, that if you go ahead and get that Woolly Wisps embossing powder, do not put a lot of heat on it, because it does have these little pieces of cotton and they will kind of start to scorch fairly quickly. So make sure your heat gun is nice and hot and then just run it over real quick, and then you get a really good result. Okay, so I want to make sure that things are even on my page. So I've taken some washi tape And I'm going to put my T-square ruler down, and I'm going to use my T-square ruler to make sure that my cut file stays even and straight and exactly the way it needs to be. I'm just using my Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive, which is currently my favorite wet glue in the history of ever. I really like it. It's very, very nice. The bottle is really nice. You can just put a little bit on it. It lasts a long time. You only need a little bit. I'm really a fan of it. I've been using it for quite a bit now. This is my second bottle, so I don't mind. I have no problem recommending it. It's amazing. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere down my cut file exactly like this. I'm going to do the top portion of the thing. I'm going to leave a little gap in between, and then I'm going to go ahead and adhere the bottom portion of the cut file. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down some of these papers. I'm going to take 2 of the branding strips, just the branding strips, and I'm going to use the branding strips to kind of fill in that gap that occurs in the cut file naturally. When you cut the cut file, there'll be like a white strip that goes between the 2 parts of the saying, and I decided to kind of widen that gap and then put 2 branding strips between there instead of the white strip. So I'm just going to measure them up, glue them down. You'll notice off to the left I've pulled some metal dies and some punches from my stash. I won't be using that punch. Initially I thought I would, but I changed my mind. But I am going to go ahead and use those metal dies, the one that looks like all the little bubbles and the ampersand, because I wanted to kind of create my own embellishments for this layout. I didn't really want to go, I wanted to stick to the flare buttons that came in the kit, and I wanted to stick to the paper pack. I didn't want to add a lot of extra stuff from my stash into this layout. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to kind of create texture and some dimension by using those 2 metal die cuts to create some embellishments, which you'll see coming up really soon. So I decide that I'm going to go ahead and mount my photo, and in order to do that and have it still sit in the place where I want it to sit, I'm going to actually end up trimming the photo and then making a mat for it. And I'm going to go ahead and put it right there. I'm going to use the T-square ruler so that the bottom of my photo is lined up with the bottom of where the cut file ends. So I have a nice straight line right there. And that's going to be the bottom of my layout. I'm not going to put anything below that, so I really wanted it to be a nice straight edge down there around the bottom and side. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a couple of these pattern papers that I really like. I have kind of chosen 3 that I thought would work really nice with my photo and with the cut file I've created, and I'm going to tear them. I'm just going to tear. So this is really easy. Just, I'm going to grab them, I'm going to tear them. So I'm going to create some kind of torn strips across the top, and that's going to pull some color up and kind of fill out the rest of the page. Really easy. And the way that, since I cut the cut files, listen to me, blah. Since I tore the papers so that they did not have a white edge, I didn't really want to ink them or anything, simply because I liked that edge. So I'm going to kind of tuck them under each other. And then you'll see here, I'm going to go ahead and roll them up a little bit with my hands to give them some texture. We're going to create a lot of texture because this page is going to be primarily paper. So we really want to be able to create some depth and texture using some pretty easy techniques on this. So you can see here, I'm just going to roll this up, and some of the white underneath is going to kind of pop up, but I really like this look. I think it turned out really pretty. And the next thing I'm going to do after I roll these up is I'm going to grab my die cut machine, and I'm going to die cut the ampersand and those bubbles. I'm going to die cut the bubbles from that same kind of ombre paper that I used to back my photo, and then I'm going to cut the ampersand from the dark. This paper here is the one I'm going to cut the bubbles from. And then I'm going to cut a bunch of those extra pieces for the bubbles out of some white cardstock. This technique that I'm going to show you here, this is something that I have learned from watching card makers. Card makers are fabulous. I'm just saying. And so what I have here is I have cut my top section from the pattern paper, and then I'm going to layer 3 of the exact same die cuts here from white cardstock. And what that does is it is going to give it some dimension. It's going to pop those up. It makes them look, it gives you, okay, so it gives you the dimension of like a chipboard shape without the smell or the brown edges, and you can make them whatever you like. And yeah, I'm gluing them together using my favorite adhesive pen for cut files and die cuts, and that is the Bonding Memories glue pen from Close to My Heart. Really, really like that glue pen. It's lovely. So I'm just going to clean up here and go ahead and decide where, you know, because I'm a neat freak and I clean constantly. I should buy stock in baby wipes and paper towels, you guys. You have no idea. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of clean my glass mat off. Make sure there's no glue and no yucky stuff on it. And then I'm going to go ahead and decide where do I want everything to go. So I'm going to decide on 3 areas that are going to house my 3 little bubbly die cuts. And then I'm going to place them kind of up and under and around. And actually, that's where I decide to put them. And then I'm going to put this ampersand up at the top. And I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut some of these speech bubbles from one of the pattern papers. I picked 4 speech bubbles that I thought were appropriate to what I want to say about this photo and about this layout. I decide that between the speech bubbles and the die cut sentiment that I don't need anything else extra in the way of journaling, and that these really do kind of stress my sentiments about the photo and getting him through school and all of those things. All right, so these are the 4 little labels I picked. One says life isn't perfect, one says stay strong, one says still kicking. And I'm sorry for that little bit of glare. I forgot how like shiny the Wild Whisper papers are, which is in most cases totally awesome because you can like layer the mixed media on top of them and they can take it. But I have to adjust my lights before I work with it, and I kind of forgot that part. So I'm just inking everything up with some vintage photo distress ink, and then using pop dots to add a little bit more dimension to the layout. And that's going to complete this one. I hope you have enjoyed this little process, and be sure to check out this kit. It's beautiful. You can always use my code DTSara to save a little bit off of your order. And Wild Whisper is really awesome in that even for people in the US, they have some good deals for shipping. So here are some close-ups that you can take a peek at. I hope you all have had a fabulous day, and thank you for sticking around for this little bit of a longer video. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye.